Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to our monthly mining coffee chat. My name is John Price. I'm Managing Director at AMI, and I am joined this month with once again, a celebrity panel of experts, this time talking about Peru, and which of course is a timely discussion given that we have elections on April 11th. I just want to point out at the beginning that AMI is a risk consulting firm and has worked in the mining sector now for about 18 years, really in two capacities. One is working with typically mining majors, monitoring risk for them, advising them on how best to address and anticipate issues, be it locally or at the national level, and working with and feeding intelligence to their PR budgets, their government relations budgets, and their CSR budgets. And the other capacity that we work in is as conducting due diligence, particularly ESG due diligence, usually on behalf of either strategic investors, i.e. majors buying properties, or lending bodies who are looking to finance projects. And they need to understand not just the risks at the national level, but increasingly the risks closer to the mine. So those are the things that AMI does. I want to point out today, and I'm going to put it in the chat mode, that there is a interesting, this is of course the PDAC event of this week. And there's an event coming up just after this one. If you have a slow day, I recommend you join the FASCN event that starts at 1 p.m. Eastern time today, which is also 1 p.m. Lima time. And we'll be looking at 7 different jurisdictions with speakers from 7 different countries across Latin America. Now, to our panel today and our event today, I'm very pleased to be joined by 4 true experts in Peruvian mining. First, John Youle, who, if you've been in the mining space in Peru, you will know well. John is the chairman of ConsultAndes and has worked as an advisor to mining operators in Peru for many years. Originally American, has lived in Peru for several decades now, having first gone to Peru in the U.S. State Department official. We have Miguel Inchaustegui. Miguel is a former Minister of Mines and Energy in Peru and also a former Vice Minister of Energy and Mines in Peru, as well as a veteran of the mining sector in Peru, has worked with in corporate affairs with several major mining concerns. Miguel, we're very pleased to have you. Jaime Bellido, certainly if any of you have dealt with legal issues in Peruvian mining, you've probably come across Jaime's firm, Bellido Abogados, and Jaime brings several decades of legal and advisory experience to the Peruvian mining sector. And last but not least, my good friend Raziel Zisman, based in Toronto, a man who you will find in any important mining conference, constantly scouring the planet for good projects, as somebody who has worked in the finance side, the mining side, and now in the advisory side with Whittle Consulting, the Australian-based firm. Raziel, thank you for joining us. Just as a note to our audience, as we've done in the past, we will ask you to, when you have comments or questions, we will ask you to write those in the chat mode. And for the first 40 minutes or so, we have pre-scripted questions that our panel will be answering, but we will be very pleased to address your questions, concerns, and comments in the latter half of today's 1-hour event. So please remember to enter them there. My first question will go to John Youle. John, you're the first person I turned to recruit this panel, and you are, by all regards, the elder statesman of Peruvian mining here at the table today. I remember John. I met John, close to 15 years ago, I think, and and been following his leadership in the mining space ever since. And a really important, and I think now deja vu moment for us all, of course, was when Humala was elected. And part of his campaign, of course, when we were enjoying record mineral prices at the time, was to capture more royalties, more taxation for the Peruvian people. And John was part of the negotiating team of miners who proactively approached the government to try to stave off a truly conflictive negotiation, and put on the table a sort of concession to the government that led to a reasonable, I think, adjustment in things. John, how likely, in your opinion, given where we are in the with high mineral prices and the high cost of COVID, how likely do you think the next administration is going to have to raise taxes of some kind or another on miners? And what can mining companies do to defend themselves?
Well, John, actually, I don't expect raising taxes on mining firms to be a priority for the next administration, no matter who wins. Even in the case of the two most radical candidates in April's first round, Johnny Lizcano and Veronica Mendoza, their proposals are very different than those of Osman Humala in 2011, which you mentioned. And his battle cry was agua y minería no, and mining was central. Johnny Lizcano is from the provincial left-leaning wing of Acción Popular, and he is a person who see it probably having the best chance of being the next president of Peru. And it's true that Lizcano is talking a lot of things. He's saying that all the resources should belong to the state. He said that he is not going to impose mining projects on that are opposed by communities like Southern Coppers, Dia Maria. He has criticized MMGs, Las Bambas, for their community conflicts. And it's true that he has mentioned that there is room for more taxes. However, I think that if Lizcano is elected, he will rather quickly forget all these ideas because he will not want to frighten away investors in extractive industries. Moreover, during his 20 years in Congress, he was always much more interested in battling the public service companies, Telefonica, the electric companies, about their rates. Veronica Mendoza is running with Todos por el Perú. She's the only real leftist with any possibility of election. She came in a very close third in 2016, really narrowly edged out in the last week by Pedro Pablo Kuczynski. Mendoza is a self-proclaimed Marxist, but he really said very little with regard to extractive industries in this year's campaign. So most analysts are taking their cue from one of her key advisors, who is Jose de Echave. De Echave runs an anti-mining NGO called Obración, and he was briefly Humala's first Vice Minister of Environment. And de Echave says, and I think it's reasonable to assume that under Mendoza, the state would exercise greater control over environmental and social issues. And she might seek to force some new mining projects to be executed on the Bolivian model, with the state holding 51% and the investor being the operator. There is one other issue which I think is important to mention, because it is a rather black cloud on the horizon, and that is the continuing push for a new constitution. This is supported by both Lozano and Mendoza. And if there is a new constitution, it's reasonable to expect some modification in the key chapter on the economy. We probably would see a new and expanded role for the state, probably a push for mixed public-private companies, natural resources being the property of the nation. So, yes, there is deja vu, but I really am not aware of any mining investors in Peru who are staying awake at night as they have during many past elections. You ask what can mining firms do to defend themselves? We could spend the hour, in fact, the whole morning talking about that. In Peru, in synthesis, I would say what we really need is greater unity among the mining firms, greater participation and leadership from the major multinationals who tend to go their own way, and their leaders don't have time for going to the mining society. We need a different style of communication. For decades, Peru's mining sector periodically blows its own horn with glitzy TV ads, which really convince no one except maybe they have money to burn or could be taxed. And I think mining companies in many cases need to build a different relationship with their communities and with subnational governments, instead of looking upon them as opponents. There needs to be a much closer relationship as partners and not as enemies. Thank you, John.
Excellent. Thank you, John. Thank you. That was no less than I expected. A true arc encompassing explanation. So taxes aren't really the issue, but there are other issues that may further, lessen the profit profile of mining sector, given the pressures on them to comply with stricter environmental rules, given this looming threat, and certainly I think will become more visceral threat as Chile goes through the process of designing its own new constitution. I'd like to turn to Miguel Inchaustegui. Miguel, the most recent edition of the Fraser Institute Mining Survey showed a large drop in the ranking of Peru as a mining investment destination. If you like, it's competitiveness. You're the former Minister of Mines and Energy in Peru. You've worked with many different mining companies. What do you owe this decline in rankings? And is Peru less competitive a jurisdiction to invest in for miners than it was, say, 10 years ago, and why?
Okay, John, thank you for invitation of this meeting. I think one of the reasons for the decline in the Fraser survey has been the situation that has been generated around to the COVID-19, which has generated a health and economic crisis. And additionally, during the last year, we had in Peru a strong political crisis that ended with the vacancy of the president, the resignation of another president, and the election on the third president, who is managing a transitional and emergency government in this moment. This has meant that initiative to encourage the mining sector to be more competitive cannot be implemented at the speed that is needed. However, this decline in Fraser survey has not encouraged all players in the mining sector to work together to make it more competitive and have a better perceptions by the people. For this, it is important, for example, to continue promoting the constructions of the mining vision to 2030, which has achieved thanks to the support of the IDB, and within a period of 6 months and in multi-stakeholders space, it was possible to build in a vision of mining that at this time, it has 7 actions that must be promoted to advance of the path to achieve sustainable and competitive mining in Peru. Initiatives such as the improvement of the prior consultant process, the improvement in the process to obtain the necessary permits for the exploration and mining operation, the constructions of a policy of the mining sector in Peru, the remediation of mining environmental liabilities, the fight against the illegal mining, the formalizations of the artisanal mining, and among other initiatives should be promoted with a great force to make the sector more competitive. Despite the difficult situation in Peru, Peru in this moment continues to have great potential in the mining sector. There is an interesting portfolio of the projects. There are 46 mining projects with a total investment of 5,000 millions. For example, for this year, the construction of interesting mining projects will begin, such as Yanacocha Sulfuros, the new Cajamarca, amounting $2 billion, the San Gabriel project of the Buenaventura in Moquegua, ascending at $500 million, among others 5 more mining projects in Peru. Additionally, important copper projects are being built in Peru in this moment. For example, Quellaveco project of Anglo American and Mitsubishi, amounting $5 billion, which is currently in this moment 30% of constructions. And April of this year, the Mina Justa project, owned by of Minsur, that will conclude its constructions and will begin to operate for the month in this year. No? Therefore, the great challenge that Peru has is to ensure that the people, the authorities, and the mining companies build together a mining that is sustainable. That helps the development of the population and they manage to build that portfolio of projects. And at the same time, this important investment is transforming into opportunities for the people, is transformed in sustainable mining activities. To achieve this, it's not only necessary to promote the constructions of vision of mining 2030, but also that mining companies have a purpose, that this purpose is carried out by all actors that are related to these important activities. And that it be carried out or win-win initiatives or share value initiatives that I think is important in this moment in Peru and in all the world, because the mining now in this moment is necessary to more sustainable.
Thank you, Miguel. I have a follow-up question for you. I think everybody recognizes the need to make mining more inclusive, more sustainable, more in the interest of the local communities. But there has been a steady increase in the number of permits, in the red tape, if you like, for miners in Peru over the last 15 years. I've visited the GFC annual event in October each year and listened to some of your others who've worked in your position, former position, promise to reduce red tape, but then when they actually get to the effort of trying to reduce red tape, it seems politically very difficult to do. So how do you the whole world needs more sustainable mining, and yet miners require more streamlined processes to transition from exploration to development to production. Where does that stand in your mind of importance to the Ministry of Mines, and are they able to reduce red tape? Is that a realistic goal, given all of these interested parties who want a more sustainable mining industry, a more formalized mining industry, one that doesn't have as much artisanal and illegal mining? How does government turn the table now and make the permitting process more streamlined? Is that realistic?
Yes, I think this is a big challenge, but we need to more comprehensive the situation. We need to listen more all actors and establish the objectives step by step to building first the trust with the all actors, and then to building the mining activities is more competitive. Peru now exists a lot situation around, for example, artisanal mining. We need to promote a new politic to how to the government to promote the formalize of these activities, but at the same time, how to these activities is more take care or more protect the environment aspect, because the idea is not only formalize artisanal. The idea is these activities is work very hard to protect the environment situations, and how to coordinate with all actors and how to generate the market for these activities. It's not easy for you. All know that this situation in the world is very complicated, but in the case of Peru, we need to promote this activity because the major mines that exist in Peru now have probably in the 30 or 40 years ago, but the artisanal mine is one activity that exists for centuries ago in Peru. We need to promote this, obviously in parallel to promote the major actors in Peru. But at the end, the world is changed. Now exists a new paradigm around to the extractive activities. The new paradigm is how the activities is more sustainable. It's a contradictory words, no? Mining and sustainable, but this is the future. The mining is necessary to sustainable. How? Obviously, we need to coordinate with all actors, and we need to promote the step-by-step. For example, the future is now the electrical cars. The future is equipment for the mining is more autonomous, and we need to work very hard in this point.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Before I move on to our next question, I want to remind everyone that if you have questions, comments, please use the chat mode. We're going to give each speaker the opportunity to answer a particular question, and then we're going to turn to you as an audience. Raziel, you follow the development of mines in multiple jurisdictions across Latin America, including the funding and assisting of junior miners. How do you see Peru today as a place for juniors to invest? What do you see as its strengths and weaknesses, and what worries you about Peru as a destination?
Let me unmute here. Thank you, John, for having me on the panel. Let me step back for a second before answering. Juniors go to jurisdictions where there is prospectivity, and Peru has three fundamental advantages that are immutable. It has a mature mining ecosystem. You have mines, existing mines, you have very established supply chains, and you have a depth of human capital that's very capable. So that's one big advantage. The second point is that you have geology in favor. The potential is there. You have great institutions teaching geology and so on. So when you're a junior company, you come to Peru, what do you face? You face the opportunity to build mines. The issue you have today, particularly at the junior level, is a difficulty in getting permitting as a junior company and to have obligations imposed on you that do not really correspond to a junior company in terms of environmental standards and so on. But junior companies are facing issues around the world over the last decade. Peru in particular suffers greatly from underinvestment in exploration, and that to an extent puts in jeopardy the ability for the state to have the mining sector contribute as much as it would to the economy. I'm involved with Whittle Consulting, and we go around the world dealing with the issues of running mining operations well and extracting the maximum amount of value from them. And this is where I am very hopeful about Peru, that the COVID crisis will become, when we exit the COVID crisis in Peru, it will be from a baseline of strength where the government and the community and the industry will realize they have to work hand in hand closely together. So for example, Roxana Barrantes led a commission in Peru on sustainable mining development, which has a lot of wisdom in it. It was completed last year in record time. I think it was 120 days. And they touch upon issues that are relevant for the future of the country. One aspect which I found very interesting, mining should not be looked at mining per se. The mining industry goes into remote regions and becomes a motor for development in a very real sense. You bring managerial ability, you bring contacts with the world, and it should be used hand in hand with the government to develop other sectors. Could be agriculture, could be in today's era of communications, could be just about anything. And viewed that way, it becomes a true partnership. And this approach, well done, will take care of a lot of the issues in terms of friction with the communities and misunderstanding about what mining is about. I was at an event earlier today, and one of the participants is based in South Africa. And they took a closed down coal operation, and they repositioned themselves, giving participation and giving some benefits to current workers and to former workers in the community. And it's this new enterprise is working very well. And they explained that they had to have a new approach that would fit the current situation. Miguel made reference to the major projects happening in Peru, and that is a great driver. Peru's GDP, about 10% of GDP is reflected by the mining sector. 60% of exports is reflected by the mining sector. So those are figures that mean that mining will continue to be a very important component for Peru going forward. And in the periphery of mining, you'll have junior companies coming in to feed that industry, and that will not change.
Excellent. Thank you, Raziel. Jaime Bellido, you've counseled companies through all kinds of political cycles and obviously the regulatory risk that comes with a new administration. And we all know that in Peru, particularly in the last 15 years or so, the political process has become more and more fragmented, more and more personality politics, less party politics. The latest polls have the leading candidate in Peru right now is an empty ballot, with 15% would vote empty ballot, according to the El Comercio poll in mid-February. There's 12 candidates polling between 12 and 11%. When you talk to investors, are they worried about this sort of political fragmentation? And what are miners saying to you in terms of their concerns about this election and how it might impact their appetite to invest in mining going forward? What can you share with us, Jaime, there?
John, thank you for having me. As you have mentioned, fragmentation is a fact that is going to happen anyways in the following elections. And we have to bear in mind that only parties that obtain 5% or more of the election will access to the Congress in Peru. So I believe that the question is at what type of fragmentation we are looking at. So to try to respond to that, I have been reviewing the last polls of 4 different companies that have published polls in February. The earliest one by February 11, and the latest one by February 28th. And first, I think that what is going to happen is that we will have not less than 5 and maybe more parties participating in the Congress, likely 7 or 8. That's to begin with. There is, of course, a big question mark on the reliability of the polls because most of them have been using the telephone lines to get the information from the voters. And that is obviously, from a technical point of view, that is not valid, but we have to have a starting point in order to have an answer to your question. So what is clear is that the president will not have a majority in the Congress. And what is happening in the polls is that those parties that are likely going to be in the Congress not necessarily are those related to the presidential candidates. For example, Somos Peru, whose star candidate is Mr. Vizcarra, has a high votation in the polls, but Salaverry, who is the presidential candidate, has a very low performance. So that is happening not only in that case, but in other cases. So the key issue here is going to be the ability of the president to reach agreements or to make an alliance with the Congress, and how capable whoever is elected president is going to be to do that. As John mentioned, we have, according to the latest tendencies, most likely 4 of the candidates are likely to be elected presidents. 2 of them are pro-mining candidates, Lopez Aliaga and Keiko Fujimori, and 2 of them have some electoral proposals for the mining sector. As John Youle mentioned, Mr. Lescano is campaigning with the idea that the mineral belongs to the state and that the state should continue to be the owner of the minerals and thus pay only the mining companies for their service and commercialize the mineral through the government. It's likely, of course, that he is going to forget about that if he gets elected, but that's more or less the scenario. Veronica Mendoza is lefted as well, and even though she has not been very confrontational with the mining sector, she has expressed openly what her concerns are about the current situation of the mining sector. So what is the situation right now? I would say that 2 words explain what the mining sector is feeling about the elections. First of all, concern and expectation on what is going to happen. According to the polls, if we take those parties that currently have over 5% of the intention of the voters, we can say that the Congress, the composition of the Congress will be center-right, a center-right Congress. And this has occurred in the past elections. Obviously, if we do not take into consideration the latest election of this current Congress, which has been elected only for a year, and therefore they have had a very populist behavior. But in the past elections, going back to 2016 and 2011, the Congress has been a center-right Congress. So apparently what happened is that the Congress will become the wall that will protect the investment and the mining investment in the country. So more than depending on who is elected president, I think that the Congress is going to be what stops any major changes in the mining sector. Now, there is a big but here, which is, as you mentioned, the empty ballot. In all polls, those that don't know yet who they are going to vote for and void or in blank, we have 30% of the people that have not yet decided or that will not vote in any particular way. So there is a very big question mark of what is going to happen. If not with that 30%, at least half of that, so 15% is really critical at this point. And what has happened in the past elections, mainly in 2016, is that you have a hidden vote and people don't necessarily express openly what their vote intention is going to be. So that is yet to be seen. But as I was saying, tendencies show that on 2016, we had for presidents, the 2 runner-ups were center-right and even more to the right. Congress had a mixture that basically, in average, gave you a center-right Congress. The latest elections for Lima mayor, again, show that same tendency because the mayor elected for Lima has a clear right tendency. So I guess that is more or less what we're going to look at. So going to the question of what is going to be the investment appetite, I would say it will depend on the combination on the Congress and who is elected president. it is out of the question that the geological potential of Peru is outstanding, and there are several projects waiting to be developed in Peru, and there is a large opportunity for investors to come to Peru and for these world-class projects. We are having trouble with permitting. Permitting is the real bottleneck in Peru right now, from a regulation point of view and from a bureaucratic point of view. How able the government is to deal with permitting. If we have a leftist president elected in the following elections, it will be moderated by the Congress. And I don't think there is any doubt of the necessity and the importance and the relevance of the mining sector and what it means in the Peruvian economy. Whoever thinks otherwise is going to shoot its own feet. So I don't think there is a question there. I think that the question is more how proactive is going to be the following government, having a center-right Congress. How proactive is it going to be in moving the projects forward? How proactive is it going to be in helping the regulation process and the administrative permitting process? And if we are going to be able to walk or continue walking, or are we going to be able to run as we did some decades ago? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jaime. Quick question related to that sort of red tape and the ability of the next government to take that on. One important question from Jorge Falla was, how do they overcome? Apparently, there's a bottleneck in terms of the execution of consulta previas, and if you could let us know if that's the case, and how do you think this might be overcome? Are there plans to put more resources behind that, or to somehow streamline that process?
Let me bring a quote from the mining survey, the Fraser mining survey, which says, regulatory inconsistencies make the drilling permit application interminable. That is referred to Peru. And unfortunately, in 2018, the environmental regulations for exploration activities was changed in order to sort of match the mining sector with the environmental sector. There are too many requirements for the mining sector, not only at the mining sector level, but also in the consulta previa. There are too many requirements at a very early stage. And as you might imagine, it's very complicated for a mining company, a junior mining company in an exploration stage, to being able to explain what is going to happen to the community at a very early stage. They don't even have a clue of what is going to happen yet, because they have to prepare the field, start exploration activities, see if there is any potential. They don't have a clue of how much investment is going to be required, et cetera, given the fact that that very early stage has the less impact from an environmental point of view. So I think it is possible, and I had the opportunity to discuss with the government back in 2018. It is possible to improve the regulations at that level. There is a lot of room to do that, but we need to have an interaction between the companies and the communities and the government to have a more realistic regulation at that level.
Okay. Now, in terms of the drilling permits, which there's been a bit of a discussion here amongst some of our audience, with Nick Copeland saying that all exploration environmental permits are granted by the DGAAM. First of all, if you could respond to that, is that the case? And what can juniors do to try to get drilling permits accelerated? Is there anything they can do?
Well, the permits, yes, are granted by the DGAAM, and maybe the problems are basically related to the environmental permits and how fast and how quickly you can move on that.
Okay.
And that is one of the problems. And the other problem is the right and the access to the lands where you are going to explore. Those are the main problems. And I guess that the second one might be the hardest hurdle to deal with, because you have to bring the approval from, or the agreement with a community or whoever is the owner of the land to being able to start any activities there. So the permit itself, it's not too complicated if you have your technical matters in place, but I guess that the environmental matters and the use of the land are the two hardest hurdles to deal with.
Okay, thank you. I want to. We've got a few minutes. We've got about 10 minutes left, and I wanted to just sort of a little blue sky thinking for a moment here. Let's put ourselves in a situation where you were called into the office of the next Peruvian mining minister and asked what would be a couple of recommendations that you would make to improving Peru's mining sector. And Raziel, if you could start us off as someone who is has often been called in by political and regulatory and promotional bodies to get your advice on how their industry can be more competitive. What advice would you give to help improve Peru's mining competitiveness?
Keep it simple and tell the facts. And I would not keep it just to the mining sector. I think it is important for the cabinet, for ministers as a whole, to speak with one voice. In many jurisdictions, the Ministry of the Environment opposes mining, which is not a tenable situation if you want to build a large mining sector. Modern mining by definition, be it large scale or artisanal, has to comply with environmental regulations. You cannot afford to consume externalities, to destroy the environment, to destroy lands, to destroy communities, to destroy human capital, to destroy small villages in the social sense. So keep it simple and tell the truth and say, look, this is what we have. These are inheritance. We're good at it. People from Peru go all over the world and succeed in the mining sector. Let's get our act together and let's simplify. And you know what is, you have a lot of groups that oppose mining per se. They don't care whether it's good mining or bad mining. They just don't like mining in principle. And those guys essentially are destroying future opportunities for millions of Peruvians when they delay projects unnecessarily, or, you know, global investment is competitive. A lot of money is going to Canada, into Nevada, into Australia, and not coming to Peru. And we need to get our act together. And the message should be a consistent message. And this is something that the industry in Peru is getting better and acknowledging what their obligations are, what they need to do it. CSR is not a part-time action by companies. It's a fundamental component of getting the social license or be able to operate in the long run. Keep it simple. It's not a complicated story. And the other message that needs to come in, and where we are at Whittle, we advocate, delaying a project has a real cost. The net present value of a project that's delayed by 5 years, by 10 years, is very seriously affected, irremediably, incurably, and is a damage that is caused forever. Nobody sees it, but it's like sprinkling, it's like sprinkling snow in the summer. It'll vanish and you'll never see it. And you're talking billions and billions of dollars of wealth that could flow to the coffers of the nation, that could flow into the schools and roads and other infrastructure in the country. And this message needs to be conveyed, that nobody gains in Peru by delaying projects. Peru should attract the best explorationists in the world. They're like David Lowell, who founded the Faculty of Engineering at the Universidad Nacional de San Marcos. You know, a brilliant man who's contributed enormously and should attract the best mining companies in the world. And Peru has world-class mining companies such as Antamina, which are, you know, run mostly by Peruvians, and which are doing an extraordinarily good job. And this is a model that should be replicated. So keep it simple, tell the truth, and tell everybody that everybody has a stake in this business.
Thank you. John, can I ask you for what your advice would be to the next Minister of Mines in terms of balancing the political acceptance of mining and also improving its competitiveness as an investment destination?
Well, I think that Raziel did an excellent job with his suggestions. I think one key element is, in many cases, it's not regulations with blow up permits, it's fear on the part of the bureaucrats who are afraid to put their name on a piece of paper to approve. There are cases where prior consultation has taken a year and a half for a junior because the culture ministry and the mining ministry just passed the ball back and forth, and nobody was willing to put their name on a piece of paper. It's not easy, but somehow you have to give assurance to people that they take a decision and you will support them in that decision. I think there also needs to be a government-wide, led by the mining ministry, effort on dealing with artisanal, illegal, informal mining. To begin with, to have a definition of which is which, to define what you want to do, but there are billions of dollars of gold which flow out of Peru into Bolivia and in Ecuador every year. And because the government has cracked down on gold exports, that gold used to go out legally, benefit Peru with taxes. Now it's one more illegal flow out of the country. Also, conflict management. Again, you have many spoons in the stew, and it, in recent years, what we've seen is the government steps in, signs agreements with communities, and then the government goes away and forgets about these agreements. So instead of supporting companies, what they end up doing is increasing the frustration of the communities, which then blows back not on the government, but on the mining companies.
Oh, those are great points. You know, it's for a lot of smaller mining companies who can operate in environments where political risk and reputational risk is high when associated with kind of a strong man leader. I'm thinking of Nicaragua. When you have closed door talks with miners operating in Nicaragua, they'll say this place is paradise because you go to one person and one person only, and he stamps and approves everything. And there is no opposition to mining because he rules it out. Now, obviously, that's not a sustainable model over the long run. But unfortunately, when a truly world-class mining environment like Peru becomes overly bureaucratic, or when, as you say, bureaucrats fear for their political lives by approving something, when they are not given the confidence to approve or disapprove as just part of their job, then you build this huge delays into the project approval process, frustrates investors, particularly smaller miners who simply cannot, their cost of capital, their limited amount of capital does not allow them to wait 2 or 3 years for a project to be approved. And they end up going to jurisdictions like Nicaragua. And I think this is important. Miguel, I'd like to give you the last word here and let us know your thoughts on what would be your advice to the next minister of mines, if it's not yourself again.
No, I think so. Thank you, John. I think that we need to continue the best ideas that exist in this moment to improve the mining sector. And in this point, for example, that Raziel mentioned that Roxana Barrantes lead one commissioning for development of sustainable mining that in 2019 the government established, and this commission defined how to improve the mining sector. This commissioning established because in this moment exists a big social conflict around to Las Bambas and around to Tia Maria, and the government say, okay, we need to generate one commission of 8 representative and technical people to evaluate the whole mining sector and propose the initiative to improve the mining sector. And this initiative for me is very important, and I suggest and I recommend to the new government to continue to implement this initiative. For example, one initiative important is around to the private consulting. This established, for example, that the Ministry of Energy Mines in this moment evaluate how to improve the private consultants in exploration stage. Why? Because in this moment it's very early. The exploration and the companies know if the project is interesting or no. We need to exploration, and it's terrible that the time that the delayed the exploration for one drilling in the zones. It's terrible, and we need to improve this. And now in this moment, I know the Ministry of Energy and Mines evaluate that how to change the private consulting for a different point, is a agreement consulting, or is a priority agreement, is the name. And the idea is to participate the government, participate the company and the communities, and establish a initial agreement. Obviously is in early stage, it's not similar to a agreement with the community when the company know that exists a mine. It's a different agreement, and I think it's important to make in this moment, and I know the Ministry of Energy and Mines continue to promote this. This is a ingenious, innovative solutions that we need to promote in this moment, and this commissioning led by Roxana Barrantes, I think, established a roadmap to achieve a sustainable mining in Peru. And I suggest, and I promote, and I suggest that this works by this commission is to implement it in Peru. Obviously, at the end, we need to continue to generate trust with all actors, and I think that the situation of COVID-19 in the world generate that it's necessary to collaborations of all actors to resolve the COVID-19, and for me, it's a good example in the mining activities. We need collaboration with all actors, define the priorities, and work very hard to generate that the mining transform to develop of the people to develop of the countries that the mining exists. Thank you.
Thank you, Miguel. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate the participation of our entire panel today. I do want to say that, you know, as somebody who's spent the last 30 years studying Latin America, Peru stands out along with Chile and a few other jurisdictions as a country that has taken the pragmatic approach to formalizing its economy, whether it was labor laws, taxation laws, etc. As much as miners may be frustrated by a more formalized and bureaucratic process today, it's still considerably less bureaucratic than other parts of Latin America. I have in mind places like Brazil and Colombia, for instance. And I think it's important that where there is pragmatism lacking in this reform process, that Peru looks to how it formalized other elements of its economy over the last 30 years and looks to that pragmatism, because at the end of the day, that's what miners above all else are pragmatic people. They'll work around any challenges, but at the end of the day, it has to be a practical approach. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I want to remind everybody that we'll be back April 6th at the same hour, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, to talk about Chile, which, of course, has its own very important elections, the election of its Constitutional Assembly that will happen in April, and which very well may be a new blueprint of social contract that is emulated not just by Peru, but by other countries around the region, as Chile has been a blueprint for Latin America in other areas as well. So please look for that. In the meantime, if you have any questions related to due diligence in the region, to understanding and monitoring risk, please let us know. We'd be happy to help with that and work with you. So again, my deepest thanks to our panel, and thank you all for participating today. We'll be in touch soon.
Thank you.